The air in the Imperial Hotel's presidential suite was thick with tension. For 3 exhausting days, executives from Atlas Global had been locked in high-stakes negotiations with Sheikh Khalid Al Mansour and his Gulf Sovereign Fund over a $5.2 billion humanitarian megaproject, a development that promised to bring world-class hospitals and affordable housing to regions torn apart by war. It should have been a cause for celebration. Instead, it was on the verge of collapse. Richard Cole, Atlas Global's CEO, had just delivered what he believed to be a carefully balanced compromise on the project's governance terms when Sheikh Khalid, whose English was as flawless as any London banker's, suddenly switched to rapid, clipped Northern Gulf Arabic. His tone was sharp, his gestures precise, his focus entirely on his advisors. The 2 professional translators shifted uncomfortably in their seats, both of them struggling to keep up. The sheikh's dialect was heavy with cultural idioms and deeply technical finance terms. What they produced in English felt flat, stripped of the urgency in his voice. Cole's chest tightened. Months of preparation. Millions in legal fees. A chance to transform entire cities, now slipping away because neither side could fully grasp the other. Across the room, near the coffee station, a young woman sat on the carpet against the wall, a small, battered backpack resting at her feet. She wore a faded army green jacket over a gray hoodie, her hair pulled back in a loose knot. Nobody in the room had been introduced to her. Most assumed she didn't belong here at all, maybe a cleaner's friend, maybe a random drifter who had wandered in from the lobby. She had been silent the whole time, eyes down, occasionally tapping on an old laptop that had more scratches than paint left on its cover. But now, as the sheikh's words grew sharper, she looked up. Her eyes locked on him. She listened without blinking. And then, in a voice calm, steady, and in perfect Northern Gulf Arabic, she spoke. Your Excellency. I believe there is a misunderstanding about the contingency clauses in Section 4.3. The room fell into stunned silence. The sheikh stopped mid-sentence, his head turning toward her with sudden interest. His advisors froze. Cole's legal director frowned, as if trying to figure out where this girl had come from and why she was speaking to a billionaire in his own dialect. Security began to step forward, but Sheikh Khalid raised one hand without taking his eyes off her. You speak our dialect? He asked slowly, in Arabic. The young woman straightened, pushing her hood back, revealing dark eyes that seemed far too sharp for someone sitting on a hotel floor. Yes, Your Excellency. I also understand the financial mechanisms you are discussing, and why you are worried. Cole stared, his mind scrambling to place her face. But he couldn't. She was a complete stranger. In less than 10 seconds, the hierarchy of the room had shifted, and everyone felt it. The sheikh's advisors exchanged quick glances. It wasn't every day that a stranger, much less someone who looked like she had been sleeping rough, interrupted a multi-billion-dollar negotiation in flawless dialect. And how, Sheikh Khalid asked, his voice carrying both curiosity and caution, would you know the details of this agreement? Her answer was steady, almost matter-of-fact. Because, Your Excellency, the translation you are being given is wrong. It makes it sound as though Atlas Global could take voting control if certain benchmarks are not met. But in truth, the benchmarks were meant to be mutually established, with safeguards for both sides. The sheikh's eyes narrowed. He switched briefly to English, addressing the Americans. Your translators are competent, but they miss the cultural weight of my concern. This girl, however, is not part of this meeting, Atlas Global's COO cut in sharply, glaring toward the corner. We have security for a reason. She's not even. The sheikh's voice sliced through his protest. Let her speak. The room went still. The girl shifted on the carpet, pulling her backpack closer. I've been sitting here for 3 days, she continued in Arabic, using the hotel's Wi-Fi for my own work, but hearing every word you've said. I grew up in Sharjah. My father was an engineer for ADNOC. I learned your dialect before I learned English. And I studied international finance until... She stopped abruptly, the rest of the sentence hanging in the air like a shadow. Cole leaned forward, suspicion mingling with intrigue. "Wait, you understand the technical details of this deal?" "I do," she replied evenly, switching to perfect, unaccented English. "The structure you've proposed, Mr. Cole, is sound. But the wording your translators use suggests something very different to His Excellency's team. That's why you're losing them." One of the sheik's senior advisors murmured something in Arabic. The sheik's expression shifted from irritation to interest. "You are certain?" She met his gaze without flinching. "Yes, Your Excellency. And if I may, I can explain it in terms that will satisfy both your governance concerns and their shareholder requirements." The Americans stared as if they'd just seen the rules of the universe rewritten. The sheik gestured toward an empty chair at the table. "Come. Show me." The girl hesitated, glancing down at her scuffed sneakers and frayed sleeves. But then, with a calm born from somewhere far deeper than pride, she rose and walked toward the seat, every eye following her. Nobody in that room realized yet that this uninvited, homeless stranger was about to rescue a deal worth billions, and rewrite the story of her own life. The chair felt enormous under her, the polished leather still warm from the sheik's senior advisor who had vacated it. Around her, the boardroom buzzed with an energy that was no longer just tension, it was curiosity. The sheik leaned back, studying her like one might study an unusual but valuable artifact. "Explain," he said in Arabic, his tone neither soft nor hard, just absolute command. She slid the contract papers toward her and ran her finger down the translated clauses. "Here," she began, "your team heard that if performance targets are not met, Atlas Global could take control of certain decision-making rights. That is a dangerous misunderstanding." Switching to English, she addressed Cole and his executives. The Arabic term the translators used for temporary governance authority actually translates closer to permanent transfer of power in Gulf business culture. To His Excellency, it sounds like a hostile takeover waiting to happen. Cole's legal director frowned, flipping to the same page. "That's not what we meant at all." "Exactly," she replied. "But that's what they heard." The sheik's advisor nodded slowly, murmuring to him in Arabic. The sheik's expression softened a fraction. "You speak both languages like a native," he observed. "And you understand financial law. Who taught you this?" She hesitated, eyes dropping briefly to her hands. "My father taught me the language. The University of Sharjah taught me the finance." Cole's COO looked incredulous. "You went to university?" She smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. "Full scholarship. Top of my class. Until, life decided it had other plans." She didn't elaborate, but the faint hitch in her voice was enough to leave the room leaning forward. Then, turning back to the sheik in Arabic, she said, "Your Excellency, the intent here is mutual protection. Their shareholders demand performance metrics. Your culture demands governance stability. These are not opposites, they are compatible if framed correctly." She began scribbling on the legal pad in front of her, diagramming a hybrid clause that bridged the gap between the two interpretations. Her handwriting was fast, confident, precise. Cole watched her, something dawning in his expression. "You've done this before." She looked up, meeting his gaze without apology. "Once or twice, back when I still had an office instead of a park bench." The room went silent again, not from shock this time, but from the dawning realization that this girl, who had walked in from the margins of their world, knew more about the beating heart of this deal than most of the paid experts at the table. The sheik's gaze lingered on the diagrams she had drawn, clean lines connecting governance clauses to performance safeguards in a way that stripped away 3 days of confusion. He tapped the pad lightly with one fingertip. "This protects our decision-making authority, even in a downturn." "Yes, Your Excellency," she replied in Arabic. "And it also satisfies their fiduciary duty to shareholders. No one loses face. No one loses control. The sheikh leaned back in his chair, a slow smile forming. Then, to the visible discomfort of Atlas Global's two official translators, he gestured for her to remain at the table. From this moment, he announced, you will mediate all technical discussions. Richard Cole's COO shifted uneasily. With respect, Your Excellency, she's not qualified. The sheikh cut him off sharply. Qualified? She has done in 10 minutes what your entire team has failed to do in 3 days. That is the only qualification that matters. The weight of the words hung over the room. Even Cole, who had looked ready to object, closed his mouth and simply watched her. The girl adjusted her seat, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. Her tone was calm, but her eyes held something sharper. I am not here to take sides. My only interest is that this project succeeds. Because I know what it's like to need what this will provide. The sheikh studied her a moment longer. Explain, he said softly. She hesitated, then drew a slow breath. I was 13 when I left Sharjah. My mother brought me to the United States after my father died. I finished school here. Got into university on a full scholarship. By 24, I was working in a small but promising investment firm. Her voice wavered just slightly. Then, the market crashed. My firm folded. My mother got sick. Medical bills, rent, everything fell apart in less than a year. When she died, I couldn't keep the apartment. So I learned how to live invisible. The room was silent, no rustle of paper, no shifting chairs. Just the quiet hum of the air conditioning. Invisible? Cole asked, his voice quieter now. Yes, she said simply. The world steps over you. Pretends not to hear you. Until the moment you have something they want. Her words seemed to hang in the air longer than they should have. The sheikh's eyes were thoughtful now, not just curious. In my country, he said, we have a saying, judge the well by its water, not by the dust on its stones. He gestured to the contract. Continue, miss. Layla, she said. Layla Hassan. As she turned back to the documents, the two official translators quietly slid their papers aside. For the first time since the talks began, both sides leaned in together, listening not to the CEOs or lawyers, but to the homeless girl in the army jacket who had taken control of the room. Layla flipped the contract to a clean page and began sketching an alternative framework. Her handwriting small but sharp, every line purposeful. The problem isn't the numbers, she said in English, glancing toward Cole, it's the perception of control. The sheikh's team hears loss of sovereignty. Your team hears performance accountability. You both want security, but you're speaking in terms that feel like threats to the other side. Switching to Arabic, she addressed the sheikh directly. Your Excellency, in Gulf business culture, governance is as valuable as capital. Losing it, even in theory, feels like losing dignity. But these metrics can be framed as mutual commitments, not as a transfer of power. Cole leaned forward, nodding slowly. And how would you word that? Without missing a beat, she recited a clause that wove the sheikh's cultural priorities seamlessly into Atlas Global's shareholder requirements. The two translators scribbled frantically just to keep up, but everyone in the room knew she was translating more than words. She was translating values. The sheikh's lead advisor studied her draft, then looked up. This is acceptable. Layla allowed herself the smallest of smiles. It's more than acceptable. It ensures neither side can move the goalposts without the other's consent. And if the project struggles, you face it together, not as adversaries. For the first time in 3 days, the atmosphere shifted. Shoulders loosened. The edge in the voices softened. Lawyers from both sides began marking amendments that mirrored her language. Cole sat back, watching her. Layla, you realize this is the kind of bridge work we pay senior consultants 6 figures for. She didn't look up from her notes. I realize you've had them here for 3 days, and it still wasn't done. The sheikh chuckled quietly, a rare sound in the tense suite. She is right, Mr. Cole. He turned back to Layla, his tone more personal now. Do you know why I did not have you removed when you spoke? She met his gaze. Because I wasn't afraid to look at you when I answered. He smiled, not out of amusement, but in the way someone does when they've found a rare quality they value. Confidence is easy when you have money and power. True confidence is speaking when you have neither. By the time the meeting adjourned that evening, the major roadblocks were gone. Both sides had agreed to Layla's wording. The billion-dollar project was alive again. And for the first time since stepping into the room, Layla realized the eyes on her weren't suspicious or dismissive, they were respectful. She picked up her battered backpack to leave, but the sheikh's voice stopped her at the door. Tomorrow, you return here at 2 o'clock. You will sit at this table again. She glanced at Cole. He gave a short nod. We'll arrange it, he said. And Layla? We'll make sure you're compensated for your time. She simply shouldered her bag and left without answering, disappearing into the hotel corridor as quietly as she had arrived. The next afternoon, the presidential suite buzzed with a very different energy. The legal teams were already at the table, papers neatly stacked, laptops open. Coffee steamed in silver pots. At exactly 2 p.m., the double doors opened, and the room went quiet. Layla stepped in. Gone was the frayed army green jacket and scuffed sneakers. In their place was a simple, tailored navy blue blazer over a crisp white blouse, dark slacks, and polished shoes. Her hair was brushed smooth, her posture straight. The battered backpack was still there, but now it hung from her shoulder like a deliberate reminder of where she had come from. The effect was immediate. The same people who had barely glanced at her 2 days ago now straightened in their seats. Conversation stilled. Even Cole, who prided himself on being unflappable, found himself momentarily speechless. The sheikh rose slightly from his chair in a small gesture of respect. Miss Hassan, he said warmly, you are on time. Always, Your Excellency, she replied with a polite nod before taking her place at the table, not off to the side, not behind anyone, but directly between the two negotiating teams. Cole cleared his throat. We've reviewed your proposed amendments. Our legal department believes they can work. If we can finalize today, we might be ready for preliminary signatures by week's end. Layla scanned the documents in front of her, the same way she had the day before, but now, every movement was deliberate, confident. She switched seamlessly between Arabic and English, clarifying nuances, bridging cultural differences, cutting through the noise with quiet authority. The sheikh's advisors deferred to her. Cole's lawyers stopped arguing and started asking her opinion. At one point, the sheikh leaned toward her and murmured in Arabic. It is strange, isn't it? 2 days ago, they did not see you at all. Now they look to you before speaking. She smiled faintly. Appearances change faster than assumptions. By late afternoon, the deal was 90% complete. Layla had woven herself so thoroughly into the process that it was impossible to imagine the talks without her. When the meeting broke for the day, the sheikh lingered. Miss Hassan, he said, when this is finished, I would like to discuss something, longer term. She raised an eyebrow. A job offer? An opportunity, he corrected, to use your skills where they are valued, and to never be invisible again. Her eyes held his for a long moment. We'll see, she said softly, before standing and leaving the room. As the doors closed behind her, Cole muttered under his breath. That woman is going to change the ending to this case. 2 days later, the air in the presidential suite was electric, but this time it was anticipation, not tension. The long mahogany table was lined with neatly stacked agreements, each page tabbed for signature. The sheikh's team sat on one side, Atlas Global's on the other, with Layla in her now customary place in the center. She began the session as she had every other, flipping through the clauses in both languages, reading aloud key terms so both sides could hear them exactly as intended. There were no interruptions. No mistranslations. Just the rhythm of a deal finally in harmony. The sheikh signed first, his Mont Blanc pen gliding across the pages. Cole followed, pressing his signature into the ink with deliberate weight. The lawyers exchanged the copies, sealing the agreement that only days earlier had been on the brink of collapse. When the final document was stacked neatly in the center of the table, the sheikh leaned back and smiled. The rare kind that softened his entire face. "Mr. Cole," he said, "I believe we have reached something valuable. But I must be honest, it would not have happened without Miss Hassan." Cole turned to her. "No argument here." The sheikh then looked directly at Layla. "When I return to Dubai, I will speak with my board about creating a permanent position for you in our New York office. It would be more than a job, it would be a voice in shaping projects like this all over the world." Cole glanced at her with a grin that was half challenge, half invitation. "Or," he said, "you could join Atlas Global. We have a few departments that would kill to have someone who can do what you just did." Layla took in both offers, her expression unreadable. She had spent years being ignored, underestimated, and treated as if she had nothing to offer. Now, two of the most powerful men she'd ever met were competing for her. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she closed the folder in front of her, her fingers lingering on the cover. "I appreciate both of you," she said finally. "But right now, my priority is making sure this project delivers what it promised. People's lives depend on it." The sheikh inclined his head in respect. Cole gave a quiet nod. Both men understood her meaning. She wasn't chasing a title or a paycheck. She was chasing impact. As the meeting broke up, one of the sheikh's senior advisors approached her. "Do you realize," he said in Arabic, "you walked in here with nothing, and left with more influence than many who have been in this business for decades?" Layla's smile was small but steady. "Influence only matters if you use it for something good." Outside the suite, the evening air of the city hit her face. She pulled her old backpack onto her shoulder, feeling its familiar weight, but knowing it wouldn't be her only baggage much longer. 6 months later, the skyline was dotted with cranes and scaffolding. On the east side of the city, a massive stage had been set up in front of what would soon be the flagship hospital for the billion-dollar humanitarian project. Rows of white chairs stretched out across the construction site, filled with reporters, city officials, foreign dignitaries, and community leaders. Cameras flashed as the sheikh arrived in a dark tailored suit, greeting the mayor with a polite nod. Richard Cole followed, shaking hands and smiling for the press. The air hummed with speeches waiting to be given, deals waiting to be celebrated. Then Layla stepped onto the stage. She wasn't hidden at the back, fetching coffee or passing out papers. She wasn't sitting cross-legged in a corner with her hood pulled up. She was at the front, in a fitted cream blazer, a simple gold pendant at her neck, and her hair pulled neatly over one shoulder. The crowd didn't know her story, but the people on that stage did. And the sheikh, standing at the podium, made sure they would hear it. "Before we speak of this project," he began, his deep voice carrying over the sea of microphones, "I must tell you that it would not exist without one person. 6 months ago, in a hotel suite just across town, these negotiations were moments from collapse. And then, a young woman, whom everyone in the room overlooked, spoke up. In perfect Arabic. In perfect understanding of what we were trying to build. And she saved it." He gestured toward Layla. She didn't move at first, the applause started slowly, then grew until it rolled over the crowd like a wave. Cole stepped forward, shaking her hand in full view of the cameras. "This," he said to the press, "is why you never underestimate who might be sitting in the room with you. Or on the floor in the corner." The sheikh smiled, adding in Arabic for the reporters from his home country. "In our culture, we say, judge the well by the water, not by the dust on its stones. Layla Hassan is that water." For a moment, the project wasn't about numbers, or contracts, or corporate branding. It was about a woman who had walked in with nothing but the truth in her voice, and left having changed the course of something far bigger than herself. From the stage, Layla scanned the crowd. Off to the side, near the construction fencing, she spotted a small group of people, men and women from the shelter where she had once slept, some smiling, some wiping at their eyes. She didn't wave. She didn't want to make it about her. But in that moment, she knew exactly why she had fought to make this deal happen. 3 weeks after the groundbreaking, Layla walked into her new office on the 32nd floor of Atlas Global's headquarters, an entire wall of glass framing the city skyline. The space still smelled faintly of fresh paint and new carpet. The desk was sleek and empty, except for a single small package wrapped in deep green paper with a gold ribbon. There was no card, no name. She set her bag down, unwrapped it carefully, and found inside a slim wooden box. She lifted the lid. Resting on black velvet was a fountain pen, its barrel engraved with intricate Arabic calligraphy. Alongside it was a folded note, written in a hand she recognized immediately. To water from the well, not the dust on its stones. May you continue to surprise those wise enough to truly see you. Khalid al-Mansur. For a moment, she simply held the pen, feeling its weight in her palm. It wasn't just a writing instrument, it was a message. A reminder of the day she had chosen to speak when silence would have been easier, and of the people who had listened when it mattered most. She placed the pen carefully in the center of her desk. Outside her office window, she could see the cranes working at the hospital site. The physical proof of what her voice had helped build. And for the first time in years, she felt the steady, grounding truth. She was no longer invisible. It was late evening when Layla left the office. The city glowed in the rain, streetlights blurring into gold halos, the air smelling faintly of wet asphalt. She passed the corner where she used to sit with her backpack, watching the world walk past without seeing her. Halfway down the block, she spotted a young man hunched on the steps of a closed bookstore. He couldn't have been more than 20, his jeans torn at the knees, a plastic grocery bag serving as a pillow. A cheap second-hand laptop sat beside him, its power cord snaking toward an outlet in the wall. He was typing furiously, head down, trying to ignore the cold. Layla stopped. She saw the way people glanced at him, then quickly looked away, the same way they had once looked at her. She remembered the sting of that invisibility, the quiet fight to hold on to your dignity when the world had decided you were part of the scenery. She approached slowly, crouching beside him. "What are you working on?" He looked up, startled, eyes wary. "A job application. Trying to use the store's Wi-Fi before they shut the power off for the night." She smiled. "Mind if I take a look? I'm pretty good with resumes." He hesitated, then handed her the laptop. The formatting was a mess, the wording too flat, but the raw potential was there. She began making small edits, asking questions, helping him shape his story into something employers would notice. When she handed it back, she slipped a business card between the keys. "Send me your final draft tomorrow. I'll make sure it gets in front of someone who'll read it." He looked at the card, then at her. "Why are you helping me?" Her answer was quiet, but certain. "Because someone once saw me when no one else did." She stood, pulling her coat tighter against the wind. The young man was still staring at the card as she walked away, her heels tapping steadily against the wet pavement. As she turned the corner, her reflection flashed in a shop window, not the girl on the hotel floor with a battered backpack, but the woman who had spoken up, been heard, and changed the ending of the case. Never judge a person by where you find them. Everyone carries skills, dreams, and value you can't see at a glance. Sometimes the person you overlook is the one who can save everything. Dear viewers, if this story moved you, share it, and remember to look closer at the people around you. You might be surprised by what you find.